apologize. I lost the URL. Thank you,
No
Deborah,
problem.
for catching me in again.
Good.
Okay.
Good that you found it. Great.
Welcome back.
Great. So we start the second session. We have maybe about 30 minutes on this. It goes quite quickly. But shall I just finish the little story that I started?
Yeah.
So I had my Japanese instructor in Sweden. He actually received his fourth dan in Iwama from Osensei I think in 1968. So and he was always retelling what Osensei said back in those days, and he would say, you know, for example, with the kokyo extension of the hand, my teacher would actually follow the fingers like this, and then he said, and you imagine strands of light go all the way out to the end of the universe. So we walk around with these light hands with these laser lights coming out of each finger. And he said, so in one way, it was like that was like the idea of scissor hands from the very beginning.
One time, I'd been doing Aikido about a year, and I went to a meditation retreat. After everybody left the meditation hall for dinner, I was sitting there practicing the Aikido energy flow. And somebody walked by and said, "Oh my God, what's that blue stuff all over your hand?" I had seen it as blue energy, but the fact that somebody else saw it the same way, that was interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the other day I watched Jan Nevelius Shihan, who's a Swedish 7-dan, relatively young, really, really, really beautiful teacher, and beautiful Aikikai teacher. He said he had a Japanese saying that he presented, which meant mind first, sword second, and body third. And it was quite interesting because I actually hadn't heard that specific reference before. So, but I heard the reference that mind goes first, or intention goes first, and then the sword follows, and then the body follows. But I think the reference again that the mind, that a lot of the internal work that I'm learning, that has a lot to do with the mind being able, so it's so much more of the mind that has to be in charge of doing the exercises, which I'm finding very interesting. Now, I was thinking, Paul, because I think you have done Aikido for many, many years, and also over time things change, we develop, and I mean, even if we don't train, we grow older, and we gain experience by sheer time, serving time.
Yes.
And how do you see your appreciation of yourself in development?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
I was thinking, because in one way, just growing up, we learn to, in one way, to appreciate ourselves in order to become independent human beings, from being a teenager and not knowing really what to do with life, maybe, like me. And then in one way coming into one's own, to be able to stand kind of on our 2 feet and think individually, and making rational decisions that is not maybe dependent on other people, and how Aikido has helped to coalesce. I don't, maybe that's the wrong word, but how Aikido has helped to form who you are today.
Well, I don't think I use the language quite that way. I never use the word who you are, the authentic self. I don't know how to figure out what the authentic self is, who I am. But it's present in everything I do. When I work in my garden, I use it as centering practice for shoveling. When I ride my bicycle, I hardly ever use a car anymore. I'm present in my body. The Aikido if I had to reduce Aikido to a couple of sentences, I'll give you two sets. Power without love is brutality. Love without power is ineffective. I tried to focus on that, both in my experience and my teaching. Somebody, for example, wrote a letter critiquing my work in a certain area just to give herself a springboard better. And I thought, like a human, I should write her a letter and tell her she's full of shit. And then I thought, like an Aikidoist, and said, if I were going to write, I think I would write by saying, I evidently didn't teach clearly enough what I mean by this. Can you help me understand why your work is different from mine? So in everything I do, I'm looking for the Aiki.
Sorry, the last thing you said?
In everything I do, I'm looking for the Aiki, kindness and power. If I can maintain that, how would I behave differently? I've seen Aikidos get really angry about the right way to do Aikido. That doesn't seem to really sensible.
It's kind of interesting though, because you use the word love, which I love, but but in one way, saying who am I and saying love in one way, well, in one way we all can, in that sense, when you say love, do you imply that we all can appreciate love?
No, I think of love as a behavior we do in our bodies. And when we do that, we stop thinking negatively and oppositionally. There's no room for anger, fear, and hate if you're doing power and love in your body. I could think of some politicians that might learn from that.
Yeah. Oh, so really, so what you're saying is actually your appreciation of love or experience of love is an embodied experience.
Yes.
Can I go on? Because it was quite interesting. Just last week, I heard this interview with Robert Nadeau Sensei, Shihan, who related stories when he spoke to O Sensei back in the day. And he referred to a story that O Sensei told him about when O Sensei had been young as a child, as a kid in his hometown. I thought it was a beautiful story just to get an insight into what O Sensei had experienced as a kid. True or not, I don't know, but it was an interesting story. And supposedly O Sensei had been not a very physical strong child and had struggled with the other tough guys in the village, and they put him under a lot of pressure doing sumo. And he had, at one point, he was, as Robert Nadeau Shihan told the story, there was a point when he had enough of it. He was like, I'm sick of being bullied. So he said, I will pray to God or to the kami for help. And Robert Nadeau I maybe retell the story wrongly, but what I appreciated was that first he prayed with his mind and he didn't move. It was just mental prayer. Please help me. And nothing happened. And then he then also say, if it's true, also say, well, I have to try another way. So he was much more animated and he started moving. And suddenly he was getting in contact with something. So when he prayed with his body, suddenly there was a kinetic energy that started working. And suddenly he started feeling something that suddenly made his body, in one way, come alive. It gave him a response to what he was doing. Mm-hmm. And sooner or later thereafter, his ability on the beaches with the sumo, with his wrestling friends, suddenly he was excelling. Suddenly he changed. And Robert Nadeau Sensei kind of implied that this was his kind of spark that led him into the movement of Aikido and the power of motion. And when you speak, I kind of hear the same thing. It's like, it's the body.
Right. I must confess, I'm a little bit, I don't mean to take over the talking. If you guys would talk a little bit, that would make me very happy.
I agree.
And anything that makes me happy must be good.
I think you guys have the most experience, so I personally just really enjoy the conversation between Paul and Bjorn.
I'm glad.
You guys spoke about love being in the body, and it feels like love comes from outside me and then shines from this body. So it shines through me.
That's like being a radio. I prefer a flashlight metaphor.
A flashlight, so you turn the love on and off?
Flashlight generates its own light. A radio takes in something and puts it back out. They're both true, but they're different.
I guess for me, I mean, one thing that kind of comes back to me over the last few years is more feeling like I'm a vessel in a way. So something like, it's like when I view the love as mine somehow, then it feels different from when I view it as something that's beyond me, but is also, I can carry it. And in those moments, it feels much freer and much more expansive. And in a way, it also feels like I don't have to do anything. There isn't a flashlight that needs to be turned on, because it just is, and it's just beaming. But somehow it's not. And it is it's both. I feel like, and I don't know that I can explain this in a way that will make any sense, but I feel like it's both.
You are
It's
explaining
both
it clearly.
an embodied thing in my body, but also not, in the sense that, yeah, like it's an embodied experience, but I have this, maybe it's just the connection, maybe it's just the expansion that happens, and somehow the limits, some sort of limit dissolves in those moments, so that it's like, as opposed to all the times where I'm very much like, okay, I'm in my body, but it's just my body, and somehow the limits feel absolute. There are a lot of times like that as well, whether that's, when I'm in pain of some sort, or something's not working, or even just, maybe I'm fine, but there's a real separation, like, but there are moments where that separation kind of isn't there in the same way, and the freedom, the ease in those moments is, and the joy and the lightness and the love is different, feels different.
What I would ask for if I were your student, could you please give me a step-by-step process to guide me to what you're feeling?
And, my response is like, no, because there's no guarantees in a way. Like I can maybe come up with things that make it kind of like more likely or more possible, but I do feel like also it's not that there's like an exact recipe that, like, if you follow the recipe every time you get the same result every time. That really isn't my experience. I mean, I don't know. I baked a pie yesterday for the first time in forever. And it was, at different times in the process, it felt like it was going to be a total disaster because, I was trying to follow the recipe, but like the consistency of the dough was a total mess. And I think it came out, decently, and we're going to try it later. But even cooking, it's like, you can try to follow the recipe and you can still screw up. As I like possibly demonstrated. But I feel like for stuff like this, there are things you can try and explore and so on, but that there isn't there's no guarantees, and there isn't and that the recipe will be different also for each person.
Yes, exactly. But my feeling is there are guarantees. If you do the wrong thing, everything will go to hell. But there are no guarantees that when you do the right thing, it will work. That's the struggle.
Yeah, I mean, okay, on an experiential basis, I can agree with you there because, I'm quite good at doing the wrong thing sometimes, in the sense of like, like being tired but still pushing on, or those sort of like counterproductive things and things that I know are counterproductive.
Sounds human.
Right. So yes, but
You evidently don't need the kind of languaging that I do. Most people don't. But that's why most people don't speak the way I speak. Somebody after one of my workshops said, Paul, you treat yourself like a white lab rat. You try this and then you watch and see whether it works. And you give yourself a pellet or something, go on pushing the bar some more.
But all right, to go back and have another stab at like answering, at least, partly answering your question. It happens sometimes when I'm sort of sitting and meditating, or sitting and just sitting, and there's just kind of I just kind of have a sense that I'm there, but not having to do anything, and there's sort of love just is, and just, but in me, like I said, but with in me, but not made by me. And I feel that in my body. And I also feel it sometimes in interactions with people that can be just very simple interactions, but smiling at people or something like that. And I also feel it sometimes just, outside or in the woods, or, I think again, I mean, this isn't, it's not, I will think about it a bit more, like more. And okay, so what is there in that? But I'd also be interested, I feel like I've been talking a lot now, and I'd also be interested to hear from the rest of you.
I was interested in your two descriptions of the radio and the flashlight, because it seems to me that what I feel is more like the radio, because there's far more flowing through me than could be created in this one little body. But I might be wrong, but that's how it seems. It comes from outside me.
Well, I also from the start, I was very interested to speak about our communal experience of the participatory element of Aikido, being a part of blending with another person or several other people, and to share in a communal space, as it were, as we are sharing a space here in dialogue. And I have always found it in the dojo, on the mat, but as well outside of mat, because through the spiritual kind of practices that I've been involved with and the communities that I have been involved with, it was very much about, and I found it helpful in Aikido that if I put my attention on the other and not on myself, it made it easier to flow with what's going on, because I wasn't any more self-preoccupied. So if I just put my sight and my attention on the other, it immediately shifted, immediately helped to get away from myself, to be too uptight in oneself, and just by simply putting my attention on the other, which I feel, is the part of being here and speaking with you, Paul, and speaking to all of you too, is that the ability to just listen to what the other, and by just listening intently or attentively, I'm not any more self-focusing, and that in itself releases me from that. Releases, like I think Judith, you were saying, it releases a lot of that attention, which is just openness and a lot of spaciousness, which also can be felt in the Aikido, then, which is just lovely. And I think many people can describe this in the various ways, depending on the background and all that. But
this is very helpful to me. It gives me a much clearer sense of how other people process language and perception. We never talk about this in Aikido. We get on the mat and practice. But this I find very helpful.
It somehow reminds me of like a thought experiment of, let's just say, like there's a VR, a virtual reality product, where it gives you the perspective of how other people view the world.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, now I put on a VR and I see how Bjorn is seeing the world, and I noticed Bjorn sees the sky as pink, whereas I thought it was blue all the time. And I put on another VR set and I saw Deborah see the sky as green, and I always thought it's blue. So it just gives you a perspective, like how do people process their own experience, and it might be different from yours. We just don't know that whether actually is the sky actually blue. Do you see the same blue skies as I do? Have you heard about this thought experiment before?
No, but I understand what you're saying, I think, and I think the lovely thing is what you if that implies, it sounds to me that if you're able to appreciate somebody else's perspective, you're appreciating it because you're able to take their perspective. You're able to see what they see, which is, the quality of being able to listen, I think, and listen. So you know, if it's a new language or if it's a new way of describing things. I think so. When I listen to Paul, I really want to understand where you're coming from, and you want to understand your experience, and that's, I think, what you're saying, Miranda, in one sense.
What I'm trying to get to is probably I can never understand how you experience things from your perspective. I can try as much as I can, but it's just like at the end of the day, your experience is truly yours. And it's not easy just to communicate, oh, the sky is blue. Because for you, pink is blue. For me, blue is blue. For you, maybe like green is blue, for example. So how we process that information is extremely hard just by words.
Well, there are ways. For
I think
example, if I'm talking about love and somebody asks me, what do you mean? I would take somebody in the class, have them stand in the center, and everybody would walk up and give them a pebble. And I'd say, watch the people moving. They all use the word love to describe what they're feeling. What do you see them doing that is different? And does it mesh or not mesh with what you're doing? That's why I like concreteness. I can figure things out that way.
Meaning that action is the same for all of us.
No, the action could be very different. It might be the same if you're with a group of like-minded people, but I'm sure there'd be somebody who'd walk and say, "Here's the pebble," and they would think that's love, which is too bad, but that's what you see. Very, very great differences. But if they tried to explain to me what it felt like, I wouldn't have a clue. But if they show me what they're doing, then I can try to do it and see what it feels like, which may be a little closer than usual.
We have less than a minute to upgrade, and I can, if you, I like to, I have time. If you want to, we just reboot it once again, and we do.
Okay. And I'll try not to lose the URL, but if I'm not back quickly, Deborah, rescue me again, please.
That's okay. We can wait. I just reboot it again, and we start back up. So no one's going to be cut off. Just give a minute.